Some of you have been asking, God, why did you let them do this to me? You prayed, you were faithful, you loved them with all your heart, yet they still betrayed you, they still walked away, they still hurt you, and here you are, left picking up the broken pieces, wondering why God stood by and watched it happen. But what if I told you God wanted them to hurt you? Not because he wanted you to suffer, but because he knew that pain would push you into your purpose. That betrayal wasn't just an attack, it was an assignment. That rejection wasn't to break you, it was to position you. If they hadn't hurt you, you would have stayed in the wrong place, trusting the wrong people, settling for less than what God had planned for you. Tonight, I'm here to tell you, your pain has a purpose. Your tears were not wasted. And by the time we finish this message, you will no longer see your wounds as signs of defeat, but as marks of destiny. Stay with me, because this truth is about to change your life. There are moments in life when the pain we experience feels unbearable, when the people we trusted the most betray us, when the ones we love the deepest walk away, when we are left wounded, broken, and asking, why, God? It's easy to believe that pain is always the work of the enemy. It's natural to think that every hurt, every betrayal, and every storm must be an attack meant to destroy us. But what if I told you that sometimes the pain you endure is not just allowed by God, but willed by him? What if I told you that God wanted them to hurt you? Not because he delights in your suffering, but because he knows what's on the other side of that pain. Look at Joseph. His own brothers sold him into slavery. The ones who were supposed to protect him, love him, stand by him, betrayed him, threw him into a pit, and walked away. Imagine the heartbreak of hearing their laughter as he cried out for mercy. Imagine the loneliness of being taken to a foreign land, treated like property, stripped of his dignity. And yet, years later, when he stood as the second most powerful man in Egypt, when those same brothers came before him desperate and starving, he didn't seek revenge. Instead, he looked at them and said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Some of you have been through betrayal so deep that it shook the foundation of your faith. You've cried tears in the middle of the night, wondering if God even saw what they did to you. You've asked, why would a loving God let this happen? But maybe you're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking why God allowed it, maybe you should be asking what God is trying to do through it. Because if Joseph's brothers had never betrayed him, he would have never made it to Egypt. If he had never been thrown into that pit, he would have never stepped into the palace. The betrayal wasn't a detour, it was the road. And some of you are sitting in your pit, weeping over what they did to you, not realizing that this is exactly where God needed you to be. You see, God is not in the business of making life comfortable. He is in the business of making you strong. And strength is not built in the easy seasons. It's built in the suffering, in the pressing, in the moments where you feel like you have nothing left. You don't develop faith when everything is going your way. You develop faith when everything is falling apart, and yet you still choose to trust him. Some of you wouldn't have prayed the way you do now if they hadn't walked away. Some of you wouldn't have sought God so desperately if they hadn't betrayed you. Some of you wouldn't have realized your true worth if they hadn't rejected you. If they had stayed, you would have stayed small. If they had been loyal, you would have never leaned on God the way you do now. The truth is, God allows people to hurt you when he knows you're too attached to let them go yourself. Some of you would have never left that relationship if they hadn't betrayed you. You would have never left that job if they hadn't pushed you out. You would have never discovered your true calling if they hadn't made you feel like you didn't belong. So God let them break you because he knew the pain would wake you up. And I know it doesn't feel good in the moment. It feels cruel. It feels unfair. It feels like God turned his back on you. But let me tell you something. The very thing that made you cry is going to be the thing that makes you stronger. The very thing that made you feel abandoned is going to be the thing that sets you apart. The very thing that almost destroyed you is going to be the thing that reveals your destiny. Look at Jesus. the Son of God, walking among men, healing the sick, raising the dead, loving the broken. And yet, what did the people do? They mocked him, they rejected him, they tortured him, they crucified him. The very ones he came to save turned against him. And yet, in that moment of suffering, in the moment where it seemed like evil had won, God was fulfilling his greatest plan. Without the betrayal, there would be no cross. Without the cross, there would be no resurrection. Without the resurrection, there would be no salvation. You see, the hurt was necessary. The suffering was part of the plan. God did not send Jesus to live an easy life. He sent him to accomplish a purpose. And he did not put you here just to be comfortable. He put you here for something greater. And sometimes, to get you where you need to be, he has to let you go through the fire. But the fire is not meant to destroy you, it's meant to refine you. The betrayal is not meant to break you, it's meant to build you. The rejection is not meant to ruin you, it's meant to release you into something greater. So instead of resenting those who hurt you, start thanking God for the lesson. Instead of dwelling on the betrayal, start focusing on the blessing that is coming because of it. Because let me tell you, if they had the power to truly destroy you, you wouldn't be here right now. The fact that you're still standing means that God is not finished with you. You may not understand it now, but one day you will look back and see that every tear, every heartbreak, every lonely night was leading you to something greater. One day you will stand where Joseph stood and say, "They meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And when that day comes, you won't even be angry anymore. You won't even be bitter, because you'll realize that if they hadn't hurt you, you wouldn't be who you are today. And if God had to break your heart to save your soul, then the pain was worth it. Some of the deepest wounds in your life weren't random. They weren't just accidents or bad luck. They were a part of something bigger than you, something you couldn't see at the time. I know it doesn't feel that way when you're in the middle of the pain. I know it doesn't make sense when you're crying yourself to sleep, wondering why people who were supposed to love you only left you broken. But what if I told you that there was a purpose behind the pain? What if I told you that everything you went through, every betrayal, every rejection, every lonely night, was not wasted? See, we have this idea that when we give our lives to God, everything should get easier. We think that because we love him, because we pray, because we try to do the right thing, life should be fair. But nowhere in Scripture does God promise a pain-free life. In fact, he tells us the opposite. He says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." He never said you wouldn't cry. He never said people wouldn't hurt you. He never said you wouldn't go through seasons where it feels like everything is falling apart. What he did say is that there is a purpose behind every trial, behind every hardship, behind every tear. Think about Job, a man who was righteous, who feared God, who lived a life of integrity. And yet, in the span of a short time, he lost everything. His family, his wealth, his health. His friends came to him and said, "You must have done something wrong for God to let this happen." Even his wife told him to curse God and die. But Job didn't know that his suffering wasn't punishment, it was preparation. What Job couldn't see was that God had a greater plan in motion, that even in the suffering, God was still in control. And in the end, God restored Job, giving him more than he had before. Some of you are in that Job season right now. You're looking at your life and it feels like everything you worked for is slipping away. You're looking at the people who walked out on you and you're wondering why God let them go. You're looking at the betrayals, the setbacks, the disappointments, and you're asking God, why? But what if you knew that this season of suffering is actually a setup for something greater? What if you knew that God is not punishing you, he's positioning you? Look at David. He was anointed as king, but he didn't go straight to the throne. Instead, he went straight into the wilderness. He spent years running for his life, hiding in caves, wondering when God's promise would come to pass. He had to face betrayal. He had to face rejection. He had to face hardship. But every battle prepared him for his destiny. Every heartbreak taught him how to lean on God. Every setback was a setup for the day he would finally walk into the promise that God had spoken over his life. Some of you are wondering why God hasn't elevated you yet, why you're still struggling, why it feels like you're constantly fighting battles. But let me tell you, God will not take you into a destiny that you are not prepared for. And preparation often comes through pain, because pain teaches you how to pray. Pain teaches you how to discern who is really for you. Pain teaches you how to depend on God instead of people. And until you learn those lessons, you're not ready for the next level. You think the people who left you are just part of a painful chapter in your story. But what if I told you that their rejection was actually God's protection? What if I told you that they had to hurt you so that you wouldn't stay where you were? Some of you would have never moved if it hadn't been for the pain. Some of you would have never prayed the way you do now if everything had been easy. Some of you would have never grown into who you were meant to be if life had never forced you to stand on your own. Jesus himself had to endure pain to fulfill his purpose. The very ones he loved rejected him. The very ones he came to save turned their backs on him, and in the moment when he needed them most, they abandoned him. But even as he hung on that cross, beaten and broken, he knew this pain was necessary, because without the suffering, there would be no salvation. Without the crucifixion, there would be no resurrection. Without the pain, the promise could not be fulfilled. Some of you are carrying pain that you don't understand yet. Some of you are holding on to wounds that still feel raw. And I know it's hard to believe that anything good could come from what they did to you. But trust me, one day you will look back and realize that the very thing that hurt you the most was the thing that pushed you into your destiny. One day you will see that the suffering was necessary, because without it, you wouldn't be the person you are today. And if God had to let you go through the pain to get you to the promise, then it was all worth it. There are moments in life when we ask, God, why is this happening to me? We feel the weight of betrayal, the sting of rejection, the pain of loss, and we wonder if we will ever recover. It's in these moments that we have a choice. We can let the pain break us, or we can let it build us. We can let it make us bitter, or we can let it make us stronger. Because whether we realize it or not, every hardship, every heartbreak, and every disappointment is shaping us into who God has called us to be. God never promised that life would be easy. He never said that following him meant we wouldn't face trials. In fact, he said the opposite. He said, in this world you will have trouble. Not you might have trouble, not some people will have trouble, but you will have trouble. That means suffering is not optional. Pain is not something we can avoid. But he didn't stop there. He said, but take heart, I have overcome the world. I've overcome the world. In other words, no matter is he in control, that Adolf Ebony Patrick does not intimidate me. You strong. Look at the people in the Bible who were used by God in powerful ways. Every single one of them had to go through hardships before they stepped into their destiny. Joseph had to be betrayed before he could be promoted. David had to fight battles before he could wear the crown. Moses had to wander through the wilderness before he could lead God's people to the promised land. Even Jesus had to endure the cross before he could rise in victory. That tells me something. That tells me that pain is not just an unfortunate part of life. It is part of the process. It is part of God's training ground. Because the truth is, God cannot use someone who has not been tested. He cannot elevate someone who has not been through the fire. He cannot take you higher if your faith is still shallow. That's why he allows you to go through trials, not to destroy you, but to develop you. Not to crush you, but to refine you. Because there are some things you can only learn in the struggle. Faith is not built in comfort. Faith is not built when everything is going your way. Faith is built when you have nothing left to hold on to but God. Faith is built when you've cried all your tears and yet you still choose to trust him. Some of you have been through seasons where it felt like everything was being taken from you, You lost people. You lost opportunities. You lost things that you thought you couldn't live without. But let me tell you, if God allowed it to be removed from your life, it's because He knew you didn't need it for where He was taking you. God is always working, even when you can't see it. But the way He works doesn't always make sense to us. See, we pray for strength, and we expect God to just give it to us. But God doesn't give strength, He builds it. And the only way to build strength is through resistance. That means God will allow opposition in your life to make you stronger. He will allow people to hurt you, not because He wants you to suffer, but because He wants you to grow. Some of you would have never developed the faith you have now if you hadn't gone through what you went through. Some of you would have never discovered your true calling if you hadn't faced rejection. Some of you would have never learned how to stand on your own if people hadn't walked away. Sometimes God has to let people leave you so you can learn to lean on Him. Sometimes He has to let things fall apart so you can realize that He is the only solid foundation. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it hurts. Yes, there are nights when you wonder if you'll ever heal from what they did to you. But let me tell you something. God does not waste pain. If He allowed it, He's going to use it. If He took something away, He's going to replace it with something better. If He let you go through the fire, it's because He's preparing to refine you like gold. Gold is not pure when it is first found. It is mixed with impurities, with things that don't belong. And the only way to make it valuable is to put it through fire. The fire burns away the impurities, the things that are holding it back from reaching its full potential. Some of you have been in the fire. You've been in the season where it feels like everything around you is burning. But let me tell you, the fire is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to purify you. It is meant to remove the things that are not meant to go with you into your next season. And I know it's hard when you're in the middle of it. I know it's hard to trust when you're still hurting. But hear me. This is not the end of your story. This is just a chapter before your breakthrough. If you don't give up, if you keep trusting God, if you keep walking forward, even when it doesn't make sense, one day you will look back and realize that every tear, every trial, every hardship was leading you to something greater. One day you will stand in the place God has prepared for you, and you will say it was all worth it. Because if the pain made you stronger, if the suffering brought you closer to God, if the struggle positioned you for your purpose, then the fire was necessary. And if God had to take you through it to get you to where you were meant to be, then it was all part of His perfect plan. There comes a time in life when you have to stop looking back. You have to stop replaying what they did. Stop trying to understand why they hurt you. Stop holding on to the pain as if keeping it close will somehow make it make sense. Because the truth is, some things will never make sense. Some people will never apologize. And if you spend your life waiting for closure, waiting for the people who hurt you to come back and make it right, you will never move forward into what God has for you. We think that holding on to the pain gives us control. That if we keep thinking about it, if we keep replaying the conversations, if we keep rehearsing the betrayal in our minds, somehow we will find justice. But the reality is, the longer you hold on to what they did, the more power you give them over your life. And let me tell you something. God did not bring you this far for you to be stuck in your past. He did not pull you through the pain just for you to stay bound to it. What they did may have hurt you, but it does not have to define you. Forgiveness is not about saying that what they did was okay. It's not about pretending that the betrayal didn't cut deep, that the rejection didn't leave scars. No, forgiveness is about freedom. It's about refusing to let the pain of your past poison your future. It's about making a decision that no matter what they did, no matter how much they tried to break you, you will not let it keep you from becoming everything God has called you to be. Some of you have been carrying burdens that God never intended for you to carry. You've been holding on to anger, resentment, bitterness, waiting for the day when you'll finally feel vindicated. But let me tell you, revenge is not your job. Justice is not your responsibility. That belongs to God. And He says, Vengeance is mine, I will repay. That means you don't have to waste your energy trying to get even. You don't have to spend your days plotting how to make them feel the way they made you feel. No, your only job is to let go, to trust that God saw what they did, that He knows the depth of your pain, and that in His perfect timing He will handle it. Some of you have been waiting for an apology that may never come. And if you keep waiting for them to acknowledge what they did, you will stay stuck in a prison of your own making. But hear me. Freedom does not come when they say they're sorry. Freedom comes when you make the choice to release them. To say, I will not let this define me. I will not let this chain me to my past. I will not let this keep me from moving forward. Because as long as you're holding on to the hurt, you can't receive the healing. As long as you're looking back, you can't step into what's ahead. Look at Joseph. He had every reason to be bitter. His own brothers threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him for dead. He could have spent his life angry, replaying the betrayal, dreaming of the day when he could make them suffer the way they made him suffer. But he didn't. When God elevated him, when his brothers stood before him in need, he didn't use his power to get revenge. Instead, he forgave. He looked at them and said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That's the perspective that changes everything. When you realize that no matter what they did, no matter how much they tried to break you, God is still in control. That what they meant for harm, God is using for your good. That nothing they did, no betrayal, no rejection, no attack, has the power to stop God's plan for your life. Some of you have been so focused on the pain that you haven't even noticed how far God has brought you. You've been so caught up in the injustice and the heartbreak and the unfairness of it all that you haven't realized you're not who you used to be. You haven't realized that the very thing that tried to break you is what made you stronger. That the betrayal that should have destroyed you is what pushed you into your purpose. That the rejection that hurt you so deeply was actually God's way of redirecting you towards something greater. You cannot walk into the next season of your life still carrying the weight of what they did to you. You cannot step into your destiny while holding on to the chains of your past. At some point, you have to make a decision. Do I stay bitter or do I get better? Do I hold on to the pain or do I trust that God has something greater ahead? And I know it's not easy. It's not easy to let go when the scars are still fresh, when the memories still haunt you, when the wounds still feel open. But hear me, God cannot feel hands that are still clinging to the past. If you want to receive what He has for you, you have to release what's behind you. You have to trust that if He allowed it, He will redeem it. You have to believe that He is not just the God who heals, but the God who restores, the God who turns mourning into dancing, the God who makes all things new. One day you will look back on this season and you will see that every tear, every heartbreak, every moment of suffering was not wasted. That the very thing that tried to break you was what built you. That the people who hurt you didn't win because you are still standing. That the pain didn't destroy you because God was always in control. And when that day comes, when you finally stand in the fullness of what God has for you, you will realize letting go was the best decision you ever made. Because nothing they did, nothing they said, nothing they took from you was greater than what God has in store. And if you had to go through the pain to get to the promise, then it was worth it.